Hi, I'm IELTS Mike. Wouldn't it be fantastic to go to your IELTS speaking test and when you got to part 2 and got the question to answer in part 2, you'd already seen it. You'd already had time to think about it, to think about what you're going to say, to prepare some vocabulary, to prepare what ideas you're going to talk about, to even perhaps practice talking about it, to even perhaps have a model answer. Don't you think you're going to do much better than if you've never ever seen this question before? This is what this video is about. I'm going to be introducing to you some of the current questions that are in the IELTS test. Now, I'm going to create 5 videos because we've got a lot of questions to look at. I've divided them under the 5 themes that I've identified for the test. People, places, things, activities, experiences. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to focus on people. If you want to see some of the other topics or themes, you can have a look below in the description at the links, or at the end of the video, I'm going to provide you with links to the other videos. Describe a person who is good at his or her job.
A person I know who is good at his job is my neighbor and friend. He is a sales representative for a farm equipment and supplies retailer. The product line he sells is extensive with equipment and machinery like tractors, planters, and harvesters, in addition to supplies including small tools, seeds, fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. He has a vast sales territory and frequently needs to fly to distant places. Although he dislikes flying, especially the check-in and security at the airports, he also dislikes the airline food. He likes to escape the hustle and bustle of the city, however, and enjoy the fresh air and quieter times in the countryside. To pass the time during layovers and while flying, he studies technical manuals to be up to date on the products he sells. He grew up on a farm and understands the difficulties and hard work involved in having a successful farming business. He also has a pleasant and outgoing personality and is well received in the farming communities he visits. He listens to customers' needs and desires and recommends what equipment or supplies they might need. Although he is a strong negotiator on price, he can strike a fair deal for both his employer and the farmer. He has been working in the same company for 5 years, and his employer considers him a valuable employee, and he is well rewarded for his efforts. Additionally, he enjoys his job as he can get back to his roots and talk with the farmers. We get together at times at local restaurants and talk about his adventures in rural China.
Describe an interesting conversation you had with a stranger.
I can think of one very interesting conversation that I had with a stranger when I was actually traveling with my parents to Taiwan to see my mother's relatives. Because of the seating arrangements on the plane, I ended up sitting away from my parents with another passenger. And we actually started a conversation over the food we were eating. Typical Chinese thing, of course, people love their food. And so we started talking about that. And then after that, we started talking a little bit more in terms of who we were, what we enjoyed doing, and so on. And this person was, in fact, from Taiwan, and was able to tell me something about the history of Taiwan as it related to mainland China. She told me a little about the kinds of food, the festivals, that kind of thing, places to go and visit. So it was really a very interesting conversation because it was really telling me things which I'd never heard before. I didn't really know anything about Taiwan, but she was able to tell me more of the relationship between Taiwan and mainland China, what happens in Taiwan, and so on.
Describe a person who often travels by plane.
A person I know who often travels by plane is my neighbor and friend who is a sales representative for a farm equipment and supplies retailer. The product line he sells is extensive, with equipment and machinery like tractors, planters, and harvesters, in addition to supplies including small tools, seeds, fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. He has a vast territory and frequently needs to fly to different places. Although he dislikes flying, especially the check-in and security at the airports and the airline food, he likes to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and enjoy the fresh air and quieter times in the countryside. To pass the time during layovers and while flying, he studies technical manuals to be up to date on the products he sells. He grew up on a farm and understands the difficulties and hard work involved in having a successful farming business. He also has a pleasant and outgoing personality and is well received in the farming communities he visits. He listens to the customers' needs and desires and recommends what equipment or supplies they might need. Although he is a strong negotiator on prices, he can strike a fair deal for both his employer and his farmers. He has been working for the same company for 5 years, and his employer considers him a valuable employee, and he is well rewarded for his efforts. Additionally, he enjoys his job as he can get back to his roots and talk with the farmers. We get together at times at a local restaurant and talk about his adventures in rural China.
Describe a time when you heard a stranger talking on the phone in a public place.
I remember some time ago when I was with some friends in McDonald's having a drink and something to eat. We were in one section of McDonald's, and we were having quite a nice time. And suddenly we started hearing this really quite loud voice, and we all looked around at the same time and saw this man talking on his mobile phone, but it was more like shouting. It was very, very loud indeed. He was actually very angry as well, so it wasn't just a loud voice, it was an angry voice, which can be quite disturbing at times, even if the person isn't angry at you. It creates a very strange, unpleasant atmosphere. And he was actually complaining, from what we could make out, to somebody who had sold him something. We think it was a friend, and he'd actually bought it quite recently, but it must have been some kind of electronic product, because he said when he turned it on, it didn't work, and he wants his money back, and how dare he sell him something that doesn't work, and he was going on and on and on. And by this time, everybody in McDonald's was just either trying to ignore the man, which was very difficult, or looking at him. I was thinking that maybe one of the assistants in McDonald's would come over and tell him he was being too rowdy and disturbing everybody, but nobody came. Perhaps they were too embarrassed to do that, but that was really quite a strange, unpleasant situation.
Describe a time when you met someone for the first time.
I remember when my friends and I had a day off work and we had talked previously and had decided that we would go to the beach to chill out and relax for an afternoon. We met at a bus station close to work, as many of us lived in different parts of the city. There I met Joe for the first time, who was an acquaintance of one of my friends, and he turned out to be outgoing and friendly. It was a beautiful day for our excursion because it was warm and sunny, and not being on the weekend, we expected the beach not to be too busy. When we got to the beach, we found a suitable location, rented chairs, and sat under beach umbrellas to avoid direct sunlight for fear of getting sunburnt or heat stroke. We had agreed not to talk shop, but since Joe was present, we could exchange adventures and stories, many of which I had heard before. During the odd break in the conversation, I ventured into the water, more to cool off than swim, as it was very hot. As it got later in the day, we decided to stay and watch the sunset, which was spectacular. We packed up and met again at a restaurant near work to cool off, grab a bite to eat, and have a couple of drinks before returning to our homes. It turned out to be a very enjoyable day, relaxing and getting away from the daily grind.
So I hope you found this video useful, and you might now want to watch the other 4 videos on the other 4 themes that I haven't covered in this video. Questions and comments are most welcome. You can leave them in the comment section below. And another thing that would be really great is if you take a test and you get a different question than I've outlined in my videos, please share it in the comment section below. This would be of great benefit to myself and also other people that are taking an IELTS test.